to today's episode at The Glass. I am your host, Mark. On today's episode, I am going to be discussing the upcoming 2024 Conference USA football season, doing a little preview and rundown of what to expect and see how it unfolds. You might ask, why Conference USA? Well, I am a graduate from Sam Houston, 2011, Eat 'em Up Cats. When I was there, Sam was still an FBS team for football. I experienced two coaches there, one being Todd Whitten, who is now Tarleton State's head coach, and then Willie Fritz came in after him. And for those who know Willie Fritz, well, look at where he's at now. He's at U of H, being head coach there after going to Georgia Southern and Tulane. But I won't get too much in with Willie, as I'll discuss his stuff later on a Big 12 preview after I do Conference USA on a later day. With the Conference USA, like I said, there was 9 teams in there last year in 23 season. They added Kennesaw State Kennesaw State joined Conference USA this year as they officially made the transition to FBS. And so with that, like I said, I'm going to give a little preview, and I will see what I bring to the table, and let's see what Sam Houston has going on this upcoming season, and the rest of the other schools that are in Conference USA. So with Casey Keller leading the way at being the head coach for Sam Houston still. He's in his 11th season. In the 23 season, though, Sam Houston went 3-9 overall and 2-6 in conference play. Not very good for the first year up in FBS. But like I said, growing pains. You got to make transition. Just some have better transition years than others, but that's okay. They were last in conference in total yards. Like I said, it just wasn't a very good transitional year, but like I said, they weren't out of a lot of the games. Like I said, they lost 5 games by single digits. 2 of those were in overtime. So they were very much well in the game, leading late or close to potentially take the lead late in the game, and just could not capitalize on some of the drives in order to take the lead and seal the victory. But when you have 7th in the conference with passing, not ideal, and 9th, which was last in conference with rushing as well. They finished 8th in the conference in total points. But to touch on that, they averaged 88 rushing yards a game. That's not ideal at all either. They averaged 25 points a game. Passing was okay. Like I said, I know 7th in conference isn't great when there's only 9 teams, but they averaged about 366 passing yards in conference. So it's, it was tough, but it's how things go. Like I said, now we're moving to the 24 season outlook and preview. So, like I said, Casey Keller is returning for his 11th season. Brad Cornelison, he's back for his 2nd season with Sam as the offensive coordinator. Like I said, we'll cover some of the players coming back, so hopefully Brad can get the offense going. Like I said, it was a little shaky watching that offense play last year. And then when Sam's got a new defense coordinator, Skylar Cassidy. Like I said, I'll touch base when I get closer defense on him. He comes over from Abilene Christian, and to replace the coordinator from last year for Sam, which was Joe Morris, who is now over at New Mexico State. So with that, for the offense for 24 season, Sam is returning majority of their O-line, which is a huge boost for the offense. For sure. Like I said, they are going to need a good O-line to get things on track for them. They have a couple of transfers coming in as well for QB wise. They have Jace Bauer, who's transferring in from Central Michigan, where he threw for 1,881 yards, 12 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. He can run. He had 365 rushing yards and 10 rushing touchdowns. So that's a good outlook for QB wise with some experience just in general playing. So then they also picked up a junior transfer as well. They got Hunter Watson. Like I said, he transferred in from Iowa Western Community College, where they won the national JUCO championship. So he will probably compete with Jace for the starting position or QB spot, but I'm guessing Jace will get the nod to start off with and see how he performs. So hopefully they get good production out of either of those QBs at the time. With that, they also have he's a freshman. His name is DJ Bailey. He did a phenomenal job in high school at DeSoto, where they won back-to-back state champions. He threw for 7,139 yards, 89 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions combined in his junior and senior year while he was there. So I haven't checked in to see, but I'm pretty sure he'll more than likely redshirt if I had to take a guess. But if he's not, then, I mean, depending on how the season goes, he could be seeing some playing time for the Bearcats. But as right now it stands, Jace more than likely will get the nod, and then Hunter will be waiting there to get some good quality playing time as well. We're moving to the running back position now. Zach Gearback. He was injured for most of the 23 season. He played only 5 games, had 37 carries for 93 yards and 7 catches for 43 yards. But he'll be back. He'll be a major factor contributing in the running game, and with Joe Gentry as well. He rushed for 391 last season and 3 touchdowns with 271 receiving yards and 2 reception touchdowns. So look to see good production out of the running backs this upcoming season. As anyone says, as long as they stay healthy. Same with the O-line. That's getting 4 out of the 5. 4 out of the 5 is returning. So some experience there, which will be very beneficial. As far as the wide receivers and tight end group, Iffy Adey, he was injured for the 23 season, but however, he's going to be heavily relied on for this upcoming season. I know he's on a lot of the watch list for awards for this upcoming season for Conference USA and all of FBS in general. So he'll be a good addition as well. Noah Smith is back. He started in 12 games. He had 79 receptions for 783 yards, which was 6th in conference. Not bad. And then 6 reception touchdowns, and then a couple of rushing touchdowns, just 2 rushing touchdowns. And then Quavis Humphrey, who will help contribute. And then as far as the tight end wise, they picked up a solid transfer from A&M. Fernando Garza will help bolster that tight end spot, along with Elijah Son with 2 touchdowns receiving last year as well. So with that, like I said, offense should be more productive than the 23 season, but really all comes down to staying healthy, as any team would say, to stay healthy, and the line can block and provide the protection for Jace or Hunter, whoever's back there, and then just providing the holes and gaps for the running backs to make the plays and runs as needed. We'll move to defense now for the Bearcats. Like I said, Skylar Cassidy comes in, being the youngest defensive coordinator in the league at 29 years old. Like I say, he comes from Abilene Christian, where he was defense coordinator there for last season for them. But as far as the Bearcats overall, they were pretty solid on defense last year. Like I said, that's what kept them in the games most of the season was the defense. Like I said, just unfortunately the offense kind of stalled in certain parts of the game, and just the outcome wasn't there where it should have been. So with that, like I said, defense-wise, they were fifth in conference with 394.4 total yards giving up. They were third in conference, only giving up 231.5 passing yards, and then fifth with 162.9 rushing yards that they had given up averaging each game, and they were fourth in conference of only giving up 26.2 points per game. So, like I said, defense was pretty solid last year. Just again, I know I keep saying it, but the offense will hopefully come around this year and help out. As far as defensive player wise, I think if Isaiah Nixon coming back, who had 5 sacks, he'll definitely help on that line for sure. DeMarcus, he fortunately transferred out to New Mexico State. He had a couple of interceptions. So you have Caleb Weaver, who had 2 interceptions. So he's back. So, like I said, defense will be hurting a little bit this year with a couple of guys leaving due to just transfers and graduating. And so Skyler definitely has his work cut out being the coordinator this year. And according to Casey Keller, he was not that he didn't think Skyler could do the job, but said he killed it in the interview. Every question that was thrown at Skyler, he had an answer to in response, and which wowed Casey to say, all right, this is our guy to lead the defense in this upcoming season. So with that, we'll see how things pan out for the Bearcats. As I was doing a little research for this upcoming season on them, I was just looking around and they came across. I was figured they would do some not so fun facts or stats from the 23 season, just to show you how this last year went for the Bearcats. In the first quarter, scoring-wise, opponents had 82 points in the first quarter, while Sam only had 48 points. Fumbles, opponents 15, lost 7 of those, and then Sam Houston had 13, and they lost 4. Total offense, opponents had 4,733 yards, and Sam had 3,737 yards. So, yeah, that's your not-so-fun stats for the 2023 season for Sam. Like I said, as far as players, I kind of did a rundown. Like I said, the overall top 10 players we can look at for the season is Noah Smith, wide receiver, Kevin Gather, linebacker, Isaiah Nixon, linebacker, Caleb Weaver, safety, Malik Phillips, wide receiver, Rhett Larson, tackle, offensive tackle, Jace Bauer, quarterback, Javon Leon, defensive end, David Fisher, cornerback, and Oron Irving, another offensive tackle. All those guys to keep eyes on for this upcoming season. So it should be a fun season overall. Like I said, it was a little dicey last year with them, but like I said, a lot of them have experience now, and so it should be a fun season. So with that, like I said, this is our upcoming schedule. Sam will open up with Rice at Rice. Then they travel to University of Central Florida. Then Sam's at home against Hawaii, New Mexico State. It's a neutral site. They're playing Texas State, which was a former rival of them when they were both in Southland. Now they're playing each other this year, but that game will be played neutral site, but in Houston at Energy Stadium. Should be a good crowd for both schools. Then Sam was at UTEP. Then they're home for Western Kentucky, on the road against Florida National, home against Louisiana Tech. They go to Kennesaw State. They're at Jacksonville State, and then they finish up the season at home against Liberty. So that is their 2024 season. So a lot of the stuff I was reading have Sam projected to finish 5th in conference. Just with that, I would say the over-under wins, they're saying 6.5. I mean, if everything clicks, I mean, that means everything's going to plan. They could potentially, like I said, it's a stretch, win 8 games this season. Me personally, I do not think they will win. I think they finish with 6 wins. That's I'm gonna say, I say 6. I mean, it might be 5. I say between 5 and 6 is where they finish at. So, like I said, improvement overall from last year to this year. I don't see them taking a step back. If they do, then there could be potentially some changes. Not so much at Keeler. I would say probably offense coordinator change. As far as defense, like I said, Skyler's first year at Sam. Like I said, he was defense coordinator at Evelyn Christian the previous year, and like I said, he has experience, just coaching in general. He's been in the, like I said, he played, but he had an injury that he had stopped playing, but he never stopped learning the game. His dad is a long-time football coach. He's been in college coaching for a long, long time, various schools and so forth. So Skyler brings a lot of knowledge to the table for being a young person. He is, but I wish him the best and the whole coaching staff and players this upcoming season. So let's get after Bearcats and eat them up. Next, we're going to move to Liberty. Liberty had an outstanding season last year. If you followed with them, they went 13-1, 8-0 in conference. They lost in the Fiesta Bowl to Oregon. They got beat pretty soundly. But with that, like I said, they have with their most of their coach or all their coaching, or let's say head coach Jamie Chadwell is back for a second season. Offense coordinator Willie Korn is back for second season, and Newland Isaac for co-offense coordinator as well for a second season, and defense coordinator Skyler McGee is back for a second season at Liberty as well. Actually, Jamie came over, like I said, last year, his first season. He replaced Hugh Freeze, who left to go to be Auburn's head coach. Jamie was at Coastal Carolina, did well there, and now, like I said, he's basically picked up where Hugh Freeze left off to lead the way. So, with the 23 season, they, like I said, were pretty sound overall on offense. They have their star quarterback coming back, Caden Salter, who threw for 2,876 yards, 32 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. He's also capable of running. He's very mobile. He rushed for 1,889 yards. Excuse me, 1,089 yards, not 800. 1,089 yards and I believe 12 rushing touchdowns. So he is very mobile. He's an athlete. The guy can play. So he's back there for quarterbacking. So they will not be hurting at the quarterback position. Then as we move to the running back spot, they have Quentin Cooley. Had 1,400 rushing yards last season, 16 rushing touchdowns, 6 receptions for 43 yards. And then they also have Billy Lucas, who rushed for another 597 yards and 6 touchdowns as well. So the running back core is there. They should be very productive, like I said, between the quarterback and running back position. As far as wide receivers, they're going to need to dig deep to find the wide receiver core again. That being said, because some of their top wide receivers from last season transferred out, one being C.J. Daniels, who transferred to LSU, and then Elijah, he transferred to Purdue. But they did pick up a couple of guys in the transfer portal to help with the wide receiver core. They picked up Julian Gray from North Carolina State. He had 16 receptions for 170 yards and 1 touchdown. Tyson Mobley, he was at Coastal Carolina, transferring in. And then Trayon Sibley, who's already there on Liberty's roster. He's back with 4 touchdowns receptions last year. So with that, like I said, offense-wise, if they can get the right receiver core in gear, I don't see why they would lose a step in their offense from last year. As far as defense, they were first in the conference with total defense or yards. They only gave up 356.4 total yards a game. They were 6th in conference, allowing 244.8 passing yards per game. They were first in the run defense in conference with only allowing 111.8 yards, and third in conference of only allowing 22.7 points per game. So, like I said, they were pretty stout on the defensive side. So with that, like I said, Joseph Carter's back for linebacker. They got a transfer from Taylor Jackson coming in from East Carolina that also helped with linebacker, and Jerome Jolly, who had 55 stops last year at linebacker. So they look to, like I said, get some consistency out of their linebacker group to help with defense. As far as their secondary, they lost a lot to the portal. Their top corner, Kobe Singleton, left for Oregon State, and their safety, Preston Hodge, is now at Colorado. Brandon Bishop is also gone, but Quentin Reese is back, veteran, so he's going to hold down the safety spot. And then they picked up a transfer Eldrick Griffin, who will help fill in that secondary for them. So there's no reason why they shouldn't be returning to where they were at last year. Like I said, they have a good. What I'm getting at is they should have a good chance to go 13-0. However, they have one of the weakest schedules this year, which could play a factor into the playoffs since now that it has expanded. So, like I said, their upcoming 2024 season, they will play Campbell. They're hit the road to New Mexico State. They're home for UTEP, East Carolina, on the road against Appalachian State, which could be their one of the couple ones that could give them some trouble this season. Home against Florida International, at Kennesaw State, home for Jacksonville State, on the road for Middle Tennessee, at UMass, home for Western Kentucky, and they finish on the road at Sam Houston. So they overall fairly easy schedule, which I think will hurt them if they do run the table of getting into the playoff spot as one of a non-power conference. Their win totals over-unders at 10.5. I'd say they go over easily, finishing well above that. Let's see, 1, 2, sorry, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's right, 13. They could potentially go 13-0. They will be in the conference championship game for Conference USA. Yeah, I'm gonna say they're definitely going over the 10.5 over under total wins amount. I think they probably finish with 11 wins, if not. I do think they did lose one game, so I'd say 12 wins then before conference championship game. So look for Liberty to be explosive on offense yet again. So with that, we're gonna next move to Florida International. For those who don't know, their stadium is Mr. Worldwide spent some money to get their stadium named after him. So Mr. Pitbull has their stadium named after him now, Pitbull Stadium. So there you go. For Florida National, the 23 season, they went 4-8, 1-7 in conference. So they not an overall good season, but it's something, like I said, to keep building on. So with that, head coach Mike McIntyre, offense coordinator David Yost, and defense coordinator Javon DeWitt are all back for their third season for Florida National. In the 23 season, passing for offensive wise, they were 6th in conference with 2,760 passing yards, 12 touchdowns, and 12 interceptions. For rushing, they finished 8th in conference with 1,083 rushing yards and 17 touchdowns. Total of offense, like I said, 3,843 yards, 8th in conference, and 7th in conference for average points throughout the season with 21.1 points. So not good, but again, so they'll work to see if they improve on their season from last year to this year. So with that, they have Keon Jenkins, who's back. He passed for 2,422 yards, 11 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. He can, I don't know if I say run, but he has 6 rushing touchdowns last season. So yeah, at least like some experience coming back at the QB position. As far as running back, Samori Lawrence, he had 125 carries for 566 yards, 4 touchdowns. And Kejon Owens, who had 80 carries for 453 yards and 5 rushing touchdowns. Both of those will be back, which gives them, like I said, experience as well in the running back position. So as far as wide receiver wise, they have, look at my notes. I had Chris Mitchell down, but apparently he's, he's not done. He had transferred out. Sorry, excuse me. Yeah, their star wide receiver from last season, Chris Mitchell, had 1,108 receiving yards, 7 touchdowns, transferred to Notre Dame. So that's going to hurt them. But they do have Dean Patterson, who had 423 receiving yards, 1 touchdown. Eric Rivers, 343 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns. And Jalen Brassey, 316 receiving yards, 1 touchdown. And then as far as tight end wise, it's kind of going to be a toss-up between various players, Rocky Beers, Jackson McDonald, and so so with their defense wise, they giving up 436.7 yards total last season, which was last in conference play. Passing, they gave up 245.8 yards, which was 7th in conference. Rushing was 190.8 yards, which was also 7th in conference. And they gave up 31.8 points per game. So that was 8th in conference. So, yeah, pretty much last or near last in defense stats. So they'll look to improve there as well. Their leading tackle graduated. Reggie Peterson had 101 total tackles, 3.5 sacks. He's back, which will help. CJ Christian had 3 interceptions. Jeremy Passmore 2.5 sacks. So they have some of the guys coming back to help. So we'll see how their defense plays out. So with that, like I said, they or for their schedule wise, they are going to hit the road to start the season against Indiana. Then they're home against Central Michigan. On the road against Florida Atlantic. Home against Monmouth. Home against Louisiana Tech. On the road against Liberty. Road against UTEP. Home against Sam Houston, New Mexico State, at Jacksonville State, at Kennesaw State, and they finish at home with Middle Tennessee. Their over-under for wins is 5.5. I see them finishing under that either. I think they win just as many as last season with 4, or they might win one more with 5. And with that, I would say there could be a change of some kind with that staff, whether it's head coach or one of the coordinators potentially being moved out from there. So we'll see how Florida National does for the 24 season. Moving on to Jacksonville State. They are in their second season at FBS as well. Like Sam, they both made the transition and jumped to FBS after being FCS. So they as well will be making their second season up. But unlike Sam, Jacksonville State had a better 23 season than the Bearcats did. They went 9-4 overall, 6-2 in conference play. They won the New Orleans Bowl against Louisiana Lafayette. They have some coaching changing, but overall, Rich Rodriguez, he's back for his third season. For those that know, Rich Rodriguez was the coach for Michigan for several years, and then didn't pan out. He was Arizona's head coach for a little bit, and then obviously but like I said, his most success was when he was at West Virginia from 2001 2007, then Michigan, Arizona, and then kind of bounced around. Now he's the head coach at Jacksonville State. For offense coordinator, Rod Smith is back for his third season. Luke Olson, defense coordinator. This is his first season. He's replacing Zach Alley, who left to go be defense coordinator for OU. So we'll see how Luke does. I believe Luke was already on there, or no, excuse me. I think he comes from. I think he came from TCU actually. Just bear with me. Yeah, he was with TCU where he was a defensive analyst during the 23 season. He was prior to TCU, he was on Tulsa staff. He was the defense coordinator for the Golden Hurricanes in the 22 season. So he fills that position, a defense coordinator. Like I said, as far as the offense in the 23 season, the Gamecocks averaged 407.7 yards, which was third in conference. Passing was not there most of the season, as they finished ninth with 171 passing yards per game. They could run the ball. They were second in conference with 236.7 rushing yards, and they averaged 30.2 points per game, which was third in conference. So with that, we will move to see how they, for the 24 outlook. Like I said, the quarterback's going to be their key, as Logan Smothers graduated, but they'll look to Zion Turner. He's a very apparently athletic, mobile quarterback. He's transferring in from UConn. So we'll see how he does. And then they also picked up a transfer from Tyler Huff, who was at Fordham University, where he threw for 1,863 yards, 10 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, and also rushed for 591 yards and 6 touchdowns. So Tyler and Zion will probably battle it out for the quarterback position, and then kind of see how one or the other does throughout the season, if any changing is needed to be made. But that, running back wise, Jackson graduated, but they have Ron Wiggins, who had 468 rushing yards, 6 touchdowns. Anwar Labius, who had 452 rushing yards, 3 touchdowns. They did pick up a Andrew Paul, who was Georgia. He had very limited playing time, so he will definitely contribute to the running back field for the Gamecocks as well. As far as wide receivers, their top wide receivers graduated, so they will look to a couple of veterans that are on the team to step up, and then they picked up a transfer from Clemson, Brandon Spector. He'll help out for sure with them. Flip Rudolph, who's transferring in from UAB, will help contribute, and PJ Wells, who was with the team last year with 150 receiving yards, but looks to help fill in the wide receiver core. Their tight end, Sean Brown, who had 294 receiving yards and 5 touchdowns, is back as well. So that'll give him another weapon, at least for a goal line stance as well, for someone to throw to. As far as defense, they were second in conference with only giving up 361 total yards. Passing wise, they were 8th, giving up 248.5 yards in passing game, and then they finished second with rushing, only giving up 113 yards per game. So, and then they were first in conference, only giving up 20.3 points. So overall, a solid defense. Last year under Zach Alley, who's now at OU, and then Luke Olson coming in to take over for defensive calling. So he's got some shoes to fill and some holes to fill in as well. So they look to bounce back and fill in those. Like I said, their sack leader, he transferred to Ole Miss, but they still have J. Rock Swan with 4 sacks and Curly Young, who had 3.5 sacks, back. So they have some veterans, like I said, to help out on defense, but their bulk is definitely depleted a little bit. So with that, like I said, they're going to have a good season potentially, and let's see. So they open up with Coastal Carolina. They go to Louisville then Eastern Michigan, home for Southern Miss, at Kennesaw State, home for New Mexico State, home for Middle Tennessee, at Liberty, at La Tech, home for FIU, home for Sam Houston. They finish on the road with Western Kentucky. With that, the projection is their wins is over under 6.5. I say they go over. I think they end up with 7 wins on the season. With that, I know they are up there, not heavily favored to win the conference, but they're up there to compete. And so I do think they will at least be in the conference championship game against Liberty. So we'll see how that goes. So for them. And then next we will break down for Western Kentucky. Western Kentucky went 8-5 last year, 5-3 in conference play. They won the famous Toastery Bowl against Old Dominion. They have, as far as the coaching staff, Tyson Hilton is back for his 6th season with the Hilltoppers. For his offensive coordinator, Will Friend. His first season with Western Kentucky, he was O-line coach at Mississippi State last year, and as far as and then co-office coordinator Drew Hollingshed is back for his 2nd season, and then Tyson Summers, who's the defense coordinator, is back for his 3rd season for the Hilltoppers. In the 23 season, though, the offense was total yards averaged 401.8 yards, which was 4th in conference. And for passing, they had 296.4 yards, which was 1st. And they rushed for 105.4 yards, averaging, which was 7th in conference. And then they averaged 30.5 points, which was 2nd in conference. So overall, solid on offense last year. They picked up a key quarterback in the transfer, TJ Finley. He comes in from Texas State. He was previously at Auburn and LSU. When he was at Texas State, he had 3,287 passing yards, 24 touchdowns, and 8 interceptions, and I believe 5 rushing touchdowns. So TJ can play. Guy's fun to watch for sure. So I'm sure he'll look to continue his career at Western Kentucky and light up the field and the stats there. As far as running backs for Western Kentucky, Elijah Young, who had 474 rushing yards, 3 touchdowns, and 197 receiving yards to go with 2 reception touchdowns. Excuse me. Ooh, that's strong. Drinking some whiskey over here. Bear with me. Ooh. Jalen Hampton, he's a transfer in from Elon. He had 880 rushing yards there last year with 6 rushing touchdowns. So running back wise, they should have a good solid running back core there. As far as their wide receiver wise, their top receiver last year is NFL now, but they do have Dalvin Smith back with 513 receiving yards, 6 touchdowns last year. Easton Messer, who had 484 receiving yards, 4 touchdowns, and several other players who will help. Michael Matheson and Keeson Johnson, transfer from Alabama State, who will help. And then they have, for the tight end, River Helms with 3 reception touchdowns last year for 289 receiving yards. So, yeah, receiver might be a little on the downside for them, but with TJ Finley, I think he'll be able to spread the ball around, and I don't think they're going to be hurting on the wide receiver in there for sure. With that, for defensive-wise for the Hilltoppers, they kind of last year, 428 238.3 yards they gave up, which was eighth in conference. 238 passing yards they gave up, which was fourth. They allowed 189.8 rushing yards, which was sixth in conference, and then they allowed 28.2 points, which was sixth in conference. Kyle Guidry's had 3 sacks, 54 total tackles. Sebastian Benjamin, 3 sacks. Will be back, but they lose their leading sacks. He transferred to Baylor. And then Anthony Johnson with 4 interceptions last year. He's back as well. So they also picked up some good transfers as well. They got a JUCO transfer from Jamar Mundy, and then they also, like I said, Stout. Upton Stout is back in the corner. He had 8 breakup passes last year. Missed half the season, so they got a veteran back there. And then they, like I said, they picked up Stout, and then they also picked up DeMarco Williams from Ole Miss, Kent Robinson from Texas A&M, and Devontae Matthews from Nicholls State will all help out in the secondary for Western Kentucky. So, I know I mentioned right before Western Kentucky with Jacksonville State competing in the Conference USA championship game. I do think Liberty's in it for sure, and they will either go against Western Kentucky or Jacksonville State, more than likely, I feel like. But that's why you play, so we'll see. Because Middle Tennessee State, who I'm about to go over next, could also be in the mix of all that too. So with Middle Tennessee State, they went 4-8 overall, 3-5 in conference. They have a new coach as well, but a new coach this season. Derek Mason has taken over the head coaching gig. For those that don't know, Derek Mason was previously Vandy's head coach from 2014 to 2020. Auburn Stevens coordinator for the 21 season, and then Oklahoma State Stevens coordinator in 22, but he took last year off. But yeah, so he's taken over the head coaching gig. He's bringing on Bodie Reeder for offensive coordinator, who was at Northern Illinois as offensive coordinator for the 22-23 season. And then he's bringing in Brian Stewart. I was doing a little research on Brian Stewart. He has a very extensive coaching background. He's been around for a very long time, but NFL gigs, being various defensive position coach, and so he's got very big knowledge of defensive side of the game. So I have a feeling that's why Derek Mason brought him on to help lead the way for the defense side of things. So, but as far as the 23 season, offensive wise, they averaged 391.1 passing yards, which was 5th in conference. And then, I really dropped the ball writing the notes down on them. With that, so they, hang on. Well, my bad. I thought I had wrote down some more stuff for them, but for offense wise. But with that being said, the Middle Tennessee State has quarterback Nicholls. I'm sorry, I cannot pronounce that. I think he's drawing a blank. When I was reading about Nicholas, I think he transferred maybe, or did he graduate? I do apologize if I do not think of right now for him. Let's see real quick. Where did um sorry, just hang on. I'm trying to figure out what I don't know what I Nicholas Vatia. He is still there. Okay, I apologize for that. So Nicholas Vatiado is back, the quarterback for Middle Tennessee. He threw for 3,092 yards with 23 touchdowns and 13 interceptions. He can run. Um, he rushed for 397 yards and 2 touchdowns. Running back Jaden Cradle rushed for 427 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 receiving touchdown. And Frank Peasant, who had 306 rushing yards and 4 touchdowns, is back for the running back core. So, which will help Derek Mason and Bodie Reeder for sure, having experienced players sticking around, not entering the transfer portal for them. As far as wide receiver, Amari Kelly transferred to Auburn. Miles Butler transferred in from Central Arkansas, where he had 453 receiving yards and 6 touchdowns. So, yeah, the whole wide receiver is just going to be a whole change up from last year to this year for sure. Like I said, Holden Willis being the tight end is probably the 697, like I said, receiving yards with 5 touchdowns will definitely be a key player to target for sure. So we'll see as far as wide receivers go for Middle Tennessee State. Excuse me. So for defense, like I said, Brian Stewart comes in with Derek Mason. But as far as defense last year, the Middle Tennessee was 6th in conference with giving up 395 yards per game. Passing wise, 249.4 yards they were giving up, which was 9th. And then for rushing, they were giving up 146 rushing yards, which was 4th in conference, while allowing 28.1 points, which was 5th. Their top defense transferred to Virginia Tech and Michigan State. So they look to fill in some holes there for sure. Tyrell Rabbit had 2 interceptions back, and Mary Myers is back as well to help fill in for the defense. So they have some holes to fill and get moving. So we'll definitely see how that pans out for them. So with that, the Middle Tennessee opens the season with Tennessee Tech on the road against Ole Miss, home for Western Kentucky, Duke at Memphis, at Louisiana Tech, home for Kennesaw State, at Jacksonville State, at UTEP, home for Liberty, home for New Mexico State, and they finish up at Florida International. They're set over under 5.5 on wins. Derek Mason's first year, with just the holes they need on defense and stuff to fill, I do feel like they finish with 5 wins on the season. I know they could potentially, if they click early and get things moving right, they could very well be on the other end of the 5.5, the 6, 7, and they could be in the hunt to be in the conference championship game for the season. So we'll see how that goes for them. Next we'll touch with New Mexico State. They went 10-5 last season, 7-1 in conference. They lost in the New Mexico Bowl to Fresno State. They have a new coach. Tony Sanchez takes over for Jerry Kill. Tony had been the wide receiver coach for New Mexico State for the 22-23 season. So he was already on staff. A lot of players liked him, got along with him. He connected well with the players, and that's who they felt was the best fit to lead the team. With that, offense coordinator Tyler Wright is going to be joining for this first season with them. He was on staff as the tight end coach and strength end, our special teams coordinator before, so he was already on staff to begin with. And then, as I mentioned earlier, Sam Houston, they lost their defense coordinator, Joe Morris. He is now the defense coordinator at New Mexico State. With that, as far as their offense last year, they averaged 413 total yards. Was second in conference. They were averaged 213 passing yards, which was also seventh in conference. But they rushed for 200 yards, which was third in conference, and they averaged 27.5 points, which was fourth in conference. So we'll see how the offense goes for them, because they lost their QB, Diego Pavillon. He transferred to Vandy. That's who I was getting confused with Middle Tennessee. Somebody that I thought their quarterback had transferred, but as I stated, he's still there. So, but they did pick up a quarterback, though, Deuce Hogan from Kentucky, and Santino Marucci, transferring from Wake Forest as well. So those two will be battling it for QB wise. So we'll see. But what I've been reading, it looks like Deuce should be the front runner for the top spot for quarterback wise. As far as running back, their top running back, Star Thomas, transferred to Duke, but they have Monty Watkins returning, who had 572 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns, and they picked up a transfer from Butler Community College. He was at OU prior to that, Seth McGowan, so he'll help. And then Mike Washington, who transferred in from Buffalo with 362 rushing yards last year and 2 touchdowns. So we'll see how the running backs do for them this year. Trying to see what else they had. So as far as wide receivers, their top receivers transferred, but they have Cordell David, who had 203 receiving yards last year with 1 touchdown. Donovan Foppel, 98 receiving touchdown, 98 receiving yards, and then Jordan Smith. So they will need to find some depth there to help there with the receiver. Like I said, Cordell David, being the veteran, will step up more than likely for them. And then they've got a tight end, Eli Stowers, transferring in, or their top tight end transferred to Vandy, so they lost their tight end as well. So yeah, the receiving wise is hurting. As far as defense, last year they were 4th in giving up 387 yards in conference. They gave up 242.2 passing yards, and they were 5th, which was 5th in the conference. And as far as run wise, they gave up 144.8, which was 3rd in conference, and they gave up 21.8 points, which was 2nd in conference. Their top tackler transferred to Arizona State. Like a lot of their defense took a big hit. Reading. So 4 of the top 5, 7 of the top 10 tacklers on defense. Most of them are gone now. I said, starting with like I said, Joe's Cox stepping out. But yeah, sorry. Um, yeah, so they're definitely going to be hurting on the defensive side of things for the season. So we'll see how they fill those holes and move forward for them. As far as their upcoming season, they start with Southeastern Missouri at home against Liberty, on the road against Fresno State, at Sam Houston, home against New Mexico, at Jacksonville State, home for Louisiana Tech, at Florida National, home for Western Kentucky, at Texas A&M, at Middle Tennessee, and they finish at home against UTEP. Their over/under for wins is 4. I think they get 3 wins on the season. So just a lot of key players leaving, and I know they got some transfers, but I think just it's going to be some growing pains this season with just new players and everything going on for them. So keep moving on. We're going to discuss Louisiana Tech, who went 3-9 last year, 2-6 in conference play. Sonny Cumbie's back for his 3rd season. It's going to be make or break this year for him, I believe, is what word on the street it sounds like for him. They have Scott Farr, who's back for offense coordinator for his 3rd season. He was a co-offense coordinator last year, but sorry, I thought I wrote because Jake Brown, who was offensive coordinator with him last year, is now, which I'll discuss next. He's at UTEP. So, Scott Farr, and then defense coordinator Jeremiah Johnson. He came from Northern Iowa. Also was at Kent State. So, with that, the 23 season for La Tech, they were 6th in the conference for total offense, 385 yards per game. They were 3rd with averaging 260 passing yards. They were 6th in conference with averaging 124 rushing yards, and finished 5th in conference, averaging 25.9 points. So, as far as quarterback-wise, they have Jack Turner, who threw for 1,017 yards, 5 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, and 2 rushing touchdowns. He'll more likely get the nod to be as QB. They also got a transfer from Southern Miss, Ty Keys. He'll challenge Turner for the starting spot. As far as running back wise, they are Marcus Crosby, Denaro Davenport transferring from Texas State. So we'll see that as well. They lost their top 3 wide receivers, but they picked up a couple transfers. It seems like, Smoke Harris caught all the little throws. Cyrus Allen, who's their big playmaker. He's at A&M now, and True Edwards is also transferred out. So, but they did pick up a transfer from Western Kentucky, Jimmy Holiday. He'll help contribute to the wide receiver core. And then they get a Nate Jones for tight end back as well. So, and then, sorry, this player, he was in the news several years ago for his name, and he's kind of bounced around. But now he is definitely, will hopefully contribute. DeColdis Crawford is in is at Louisiana Tech now, so he will hopefully give him a boost there for wide receiver wise. So going from there, defense wise for Louisiana Tech, they struggled. Giving up 418 yards per game, which was 7th in conference. They were good on the passing side, only giving up 185 passing yards, which was 2nd in conference. But they were last with giving up 232 rushing yards, and last giving up points with 33.4. So not a whole lot to build on with that, but they will give their best shot on there. They do have Macaulay Clark back. They picked up a JUCO transfer with Trevel Vivians and Adam Lamar to help rotate on the defensive line. As far as linebacker, they got a transfer from North Texas, Sifa Leota, and Jamarcus Jones from UAB as well. As far as their secondary, they only had 5 picks overall last year. Like I said, they did well. They were number 2 in conference-wise, but they picked up a couple of transfers to help fill in some of the holes. So we'll see how the defense does this year with their like I said, their new defense coordinator. So, with that, we're going to go to UTEP. So, for UTEP, last year they went 3-9, 2-6 overall, 2-6 in conference play. They have a new head coach, Scotty Walden. He was previously the head coach for Austin Peay. From 2020 to 2023, he had a 26-14 overall record there. He replaces Dana as the head coach. He has replaces Dana, who was fired. He brought in Jake Brown, like who I said, he was one of the co-offense coordinators at Louisiana Tech last year. Now he's offense coordinator at UTEP. And then Scotty brought over his defense coordinator, J.J. Clark, or co-defense coordinator J.J. Clark from Austin Peay. He was defense coordinator there. And then he also has Kelvin Sigler, who comes over from Jacksonville State, where he was defense coordinator there. So, with that, offensive-wise, they were 7th in conference last year for total offense, 362 yards averaging. They were 6th in conference, averaging 217 passing yards. And they were 4th in rushing with 144 averaging per game, and then they averaged 19.9 points, which was ninth. So not good as far as points production. So we'll see how they do there. As far as offense, though, Cade McConnell, I believe, is back to lead the way. However, Skylar Locklear transferred from Austin P to come over to help. But Cade, though, last year he threw for 1,437 yards, 6 touchdowns. So some experience there for them. As far as the receiving wise, their leading receiver last year, Kelly, left for Mississippi State. Tyron Smith went to Cincinnati, and then they picked up Trey Goodman from Austin P, who averaged 21 yards per catch with 7 touchdowns. Like I said, Jaden Smith, who transferred in from Eastern Kentucky, with career catches of 173. So they got some veterans, as far as veterans, guys who have a couple years of playing already coming over to help out with the wide receiver core, which will be very beneficial. O-line wise, they'll have a whole new front line. Not a whole lot of depth, but like I said, they'll get there. Javon Jackson ran for 1,373 yards, 10 scores last year at Austin P, which transferred over, which gives them a little boost. And then they have Ezekiel Jolly, who will be a good backup for them at running back. And then to round out Conference USA, or I'm gonna go back to UTEP real quick on before I round out. UTEP will open the season at Nebraska, home for Southern Utah, at Liberty, at Colorado State, home for Sam Houston, at Western Kentucky, home for Florida National, at Louisiana Tech, home for Middle Tennessee, Kennesaw State, at Tennessee, and finished at New Mexico State. So with that, they have their over-under ones at 4.5. They will finish with 4. I don't see them getting over the 4.5 or 5. They finish probably with 3 wins, maybe 4 at best. So, but then to round out the Conference USA teams for the season, Kennesaw State. It was a transitional year last year, meaning they played their season. It didn't count towards anything. Just more of getting experience for some of the guys. Some guys will play a couple games, and then, like I said, you can play up to 4 games, and then you can sit rest of the season, and it doesn't count towards your eligibility. So a lot of guys did that, so they didn't lose their eligibility when they were to start playing this year, and at the FBS level in Conference USA. So with that, like I said, they went 3-6. They've only been around, I think someone said, since 2015, I think. So they're I think they've only been around for almost 10 years for the football program. So it's still a fairly, very young football program there at Kennesaw State. But leading the way is their head coach, Brian Bohannon. It's his 10th season as the head coach for the Owls. with that, he has his co-office coordinator Chandler Burks. He's first season as a office coordinator, but he's been with them for 4 years as a QB coach. And then the other co-office coordinator is Stuart Cook, who was also been on staff for 9 years as a tight end coach. So, but both will be their first season, like I said, running as offense coordinators. And then as far as defense coordinator wise, Greg Harris takes over as a defense coordinator. He was 4 years as a linebacker coach. So all these guys have been with Brian for several years prior to all this. Like I said, just reading, trying to get some more info about the team. Again, I apologize, not doing too much on them, but looks like they will we need some more pop, I guess in other words, out of their offense for sure. Passing wise was not very strong. The little bit I did find though for looks like Davis Bryson is going to take over QB. Jonathan Murphy led them last year, but he's gone now. So Davis Bryson will be taking over. As far as rushing, I believe they have Michael Benefield back with 566 rushing yards, 546 rushing yards, 6 touchdowns. I think Jonathan Murphy might be back as well. He had a pretty good season last year. So we'll see. As far as online, they get 3 of their 5 starters back on the line, but they got some transfer guys coming in to help fill some of the holes. Michael Benfield, like I was talking about, and then so that'll be it for the offense. So, like I said, some growing pains for Kennesaw on offense. And as far as defensive wise, they have some veterans coming back. Kyler Scott is back. Jordan Miles, Ugan Noah is back for as well. So that'll help with some pass rush and help give them some pressure as well on the QB. As far as secondary, the looks pretty good for them. They have Sidney Porter, corners, and Jericho Washington will be back, and Javon Williams as well. So their leading tackle did leave to go to U of H, DeAndre Morris, who left. So with that rounds out the 2024 Conference USA members for the season. Like I was stating, I think Liberty probably has a good shot to repeat as conference champion again. I don't think neither or any team in Conference USA makes the playoffs, but that's okay. Bahamas Bowl will be nice, or the New Orleans Bowl, and then all the other bowls that they're tied to, Independence Bowl or the bowl in Fort Worth. So there's several bowls out there that Conference USA is linked to, tied to, which are all great bowls to play in if you get your 6 wins on the season. Sorry, I know I didn't. And then as far as Kennesaw State, they're projected to go back real quick to Kennesaw State. Win total is at 3. They probably finish at 3 wins. I would say, yeah, they finish at 3 wins. They have UTSA, Louisiana, San Jose State, UT Martin, Jacksonville State, Middle Tennessee, Liberty, Western Kentucky, UTEP, Sam Houston, Florida National, Louisiana Tech. With that, I think they could probably get to 3 wins on the season, maybe 4, but that's probably going to be it for them. So we'll see how it shapes out for all the teams this year. Like I said, me being a Bearcat, I hope they produce well and perform well and come out on top with that. And then before anything else, like I said, the Conference USA is expanding again for the 25 season. They are adding 2 more schools to the conference. They are adding Delaware, who was, I believe, where Casey Keller was a coach at prior to Sam as well. And then they, I think, Central Missouri is it joining as well. Let's see real quick. Sorry. Excuse me. Yeah, so Delaware will be joining the 25 season with Missouri State joining the conference for the 25-26 season. So they will have 12 teams or schools in Conference USA. So it looked depleted at one point when all the schools were moving around, but they've done a good job overall adding teams and keeping some of the schools in place for Conference USA. So with that, like I said, I will be doing a breakdown of the Big 12 here soon. So I'll get that done, and then I'll do the SEC as well. In the meantime, if you feel like shooting me questions or just whatever, feel free to. You can send all that to @theglasspodcast@gmail.com. Like I said, @theglasspodcast@gmail.com. If you want to send over any questions or whatever it may be, just for funds, feel free to do so. Talk about whatever. And then for those who y'all that do Twitch, that's a thing, I know. Go follow my good friend Christian. His tag is Choppa Style Games. Choppa Style Games. If you want to follow someone on my buddy on Twitch there, and just as he navigates all the games through there. So again, that's a wrap on the preview for the 24th season for Conference USA, and I look forward to this upcoming season. Until then, take care.